Hello and welcome to Fun with Maths with me, Bijal. Today we're going to be looking at time, and by the end of this lesson I'm hoping you're going to be able to help me with this riddle that I've been struggling to solve. But in order to do that we need to learn how to tell the basics of time first. So for today's lesson you're going to need a pen or a pencil to write with, something to write on, and your brain to work really hard to help me solve my riddle. Pause the video if you need to go and get your pen or your paper ready to get started. Okay, so today's structure, we're going to start off looking at o'clock and half past. We'll then move on to quarter past and quarter to, and we'll end off with my code breaker activity. So that's my riddle that I need some help solving. So before we get started on o'clock and half past, let's just have a think about how to read a clock. So you can see I've got a blank clock over here. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to split my clock in half. Okay, so I'm going to now look at each half of the clock. So whenever my minute hand, and we'll talk about which one is the minute hand in a little while, whenever my minute hand is on this side of the clock, on this half, we use the word past, okay? Whenever my minute hand is on the other half of the clock, we use the word to. So those are two of our key words that we're going to need when telling the time, past and to. What I can now do is I can split my clock in half again. So now I've split my clock into quarters. You can see I've got 4 quarters. This is really important because this is how we get some of our language to do with time. Whenever our minute hand is on the 6, we can see that it's halfway around the clock, so we say half past. Whenever my minute hand is on the 3, it is a quarter of the way past the clock, so we say quarter past. Whenever my minute hand is on the 9, we can see it's 3/4 of the way past. But to say 3/4 past sounds really long, so instead we say quarter to. It's quarter of the way to the next hour. Now that might seem a little bit confusing now, but we're going to break it down into steps to try and learn the basics of time. So let's start off with o'clock and half past. So you can see here I've colour coded my hands. So wherever I've got my red hand, it means that it's the minute hand, and my hour hand is the blue hand. Now our minute hand on a clock is always the longer hand, and our hour hand is the shorter hand. Now, if you find it a little bit tricky to remember that, a way that I found really useful is I look at the words minute and hour. I can see that minute is a much longer word, so the minute hand is longer. The word hour is a shorter word. It only has 4 letters. So my hour hand, is shorter. That's one way that you can remember it. Now we're starting off looking at o'clock. O'clock means my minute hand, so my long hand, is on the 12. So for example, on this clock you can see it is 5 o'clock. My hour hand is pointing to the 5 and my minute hand is on the 12. 5 o'clock. Let's have a go at the next one together. Again, my minute hand is still pointing at the 12, so I know that it's o'clock, but this time my hour hand is pointing to the 3. What time do you think this is? So it is 3 o'clock. My hour hand is pointing to the 3, my minute hand is still on the 12. Let's have a go at this one. Do you want to pause the video and write down what time you think it is on this clock? Look carefully, my minute hand is on the 12. What does it mean when my minute hand is on the 12? My hour hand is pointed towards the 11. Pause the video and write down the time. Did you write down 11 o'clock? I hope you did, because it is showing me 11 o'clock. Let's do one more example. My minute hand has stayed on the 12. Think about what words we need to use. This time, have a look at which number my hour hand is pointing to. Pause the video and write down what time you think it is. Hopefully you've written down 7 o'clock, because my hour hand is pointing towards the 7. Okay, if you think that you did okay with that, we're ready to move on to half past. So we know that when we did o'clock, our minute hand was always pointing to the 12. Where do you think our minute hand will point when it is half past? Hopefully you've said on the 6, because that is halfway around the clock. So when it is half past, My minute hand is halfway around the clock and it's on the 6. My hour hand, this is really important, has to go halfway between 2 digits. So right now this is showing me 1:30, which means that it is exactly halfway between 1 o'clock and 2 o'clock. Let's have a look at another example. Again, I can see my minute hand is on the 6. So what word do I need to use? Well done, 1/2. What is it 1/2? Let's have a look at my hour hand. It is 8:30, which means it is halfway past 8 o'clock. And you can see clearly my hour hand is halfway between the 8 and the 9. Now let's see if you can have a go on the next slide. Pause the video and see if you can write down what time is my clock showing. Hopefully you have written down 5:30. My minute hand is on the 6, which means it is 1/2. My hour hand is halfway between 5 and 6, so it is 5:30. Let's do one more example. Again, pause the video. What time do you think it is on this clock? Hopefully you have written down 9:30. My minute hand's on the 6, my hour hand is halfway between 9 and 10. So far we have learned o'clock, and when it is o'clock, where is my minute hand? Well done, my minute hand is on the 12 when it is o'clock. When it is 1/2, my minute hand is on the 6. Are you ready to move on? Let's see what we're going to learn next. We're now going to move on to 1/4. Now, if you think back to the first slide, we split our clock into 4 equal pieces, into 4 quarters. Now, we knew that when we come round the clock onto the 6, it is 1/2. If we divide that again into a quarter, our minute hand would be on the 3, which is 1/4. So on this time here, I can see it is 2:15, because my minute hand is pointing at the 3 and my hour hand is just past the 2, 2:15. Let's have a look at another example. Again, my minute hand is on the 3, which is showing me it's 1/4. My hour hand is just past the 6. What time is it? Well done, it is 6:15. Pause the video and see if you can have a go at this one on your own. Write down the time on my clock. Okay, hopefully you have written down 8:15. My minute hand is on the 3, which I know means 1/4. My hour hand is just past the 8. Ready for one more example? Pause the video and write down what time you think it is on the clock. Shall we see if you got it right? Hopefully you have written 12:15. So if we know that 12 is o'clock, 3 is 1/4, 6 is 1/2, where do you think 1/4 would go? Where would my minute hand point to when it is 1/4? If this is 1/4, well, it would point at the 9. So whenever my minute hand, my long hand, is pointing at the 9, we say it is 1/4. So on this clock, it is 11:15. This means that if once it goes, that my minute hand goes round the next quarter of the clock, so here's my quarter here, it will be 11 o'clock. So it is a quarter of the way until 11 o'clock, 11:15. Let's have a look at another example. I can see my minute hand is on the 9, so I know I need to start with the words 1/4. What is it 1/4? It is 1/4, which means in a quarter of an hour, it will be 2 o'clock. Now it's really important to look at my hour hand here. You can see my hour hand has to come just before the 2, because like I said, in a quarter of an hour, it will be 2 o'clock. So it's almost 2 o'clock, 1:45. Are you ready to have a turn of your own? Pause the video and write down on your piece of paper what time you think is showing on my clock. My minute hand is on the 9. What does that mean? Have a look at where my hour hand is. Hopefully you've written down 4:45. In a quarter of an hour, it will be 5 o'clock. And here's our last example. Pause the video and write down what time you think is showing on my clock. Hopefully you have written down 11:45. In a quarter of an hour, it will be 12 o'clock. How do you think you found that? So hopefully you have learned to tell the time at o'clock, 1/2 past, 1/4 past, and 1/4 to. If you think you need a bit more practice in any of those, go back through the video and do a bit of practice before coming back to help me solve my riddle. Are you ready for my riddle? Let's have a look. So let's have a look at my riddle. So it says, I make a loud sound when I'm changing. When I do change, I get bigger, but way less. What am I? So I can see the lines here, one for each letter. I can see my clock, and I've got 4 letters around my clock. And over here, I've got some clues. So I'm going to start you off. Underneath the first line, I can see o'clock. So I need to have a think. What letter or what number would my clock, would my minute hand be pointing to at o'clock? O'clock. We did this at the start of the lesson. At o'clock, my minute hand would be pointing to 12. And above the number 12, I can see the letter P. So I can put in my first letter. So I know the first letter of my word is P. Let's have a go at the second one together. My clue is 1/4 to. When it is 1/4 to, what number would my minute hand be pointing to? 1/4 to. Well done, it would be pointing to the 9. What letter is written by the number 9? It's the letter O, so I can put in my second letter. Right, I've helped you out with the first 2 letters. Do you want to pause the video and see if you can figure out the rest of the clues to answer this riddle? Come back when you're ready to go through the answers. Okay, do you think you've solved it? Let's see how you got on. So my next one was o'clock. And I know at o'clock, my minute hand points to the 12, so that will be another letter P. My next clue is 1/4 past. I know at 1/4 past, my minute hand points to the 3, and next to the letter 3, I've got the letter C. My next clue is 1/4 to. Oh, we did this one earlier. At 1/4 to, where does my minute hand point? Well done, it points to the 9, which is the letter O. Oh, I think I might know what this word says now. Let's have a look at my next one, 1/2 past. Where does my minute hand point at 1/2 past? It points at the 6, and under the number 6, I've got the letter R. Now, there's no clue for the last letter. Do you know what it might be? Have you managed to figure it out? It should be an N. So the answer to my riddle was popcorn. I make a loud sound when I'm changing. Popcorn definitely does that. When I do change, I get bigger, but I weigh less. What am I? Oh, lovely. And you know, popcorn is one of my favourite snacks to have. Well, I hope you managed to crack that riddle, and I hope you've had fun learning about some basics of time today. Thank you for joining in. Bye.